Hey guys, what's going on? This is John from Friends with Your Benefits. I'm going to make a prediction today. For employers who happen to cover weight loss medications, it's going to be one of the top drivers of your healthcare costs for 2024. Many employers are at a crossroads right now. Some are saying, hey, the potential spend for these weight loss medications is too much, and perhaps it makes sense to no longer offer them as part of our healthcare offering for employees. Others are saying, hey, we really see the value that this offers to our employees, but we need to manage the spend a little bit tighter, and perhaps we could work with our PBM to manage the spend, but they have to balance that with the potential for employee noise. But what if there was a better way? Joining us today to learn about how employers can potentially save up to 50% on their weight loss medication spend, we have Jane Suttmeier, an executive from Forma. Hey, Jane, how's it going? Welcome to the show.
Thanks, John. Happy to be here, reporting live from Chicago, Illinois.
Oh, there you go. So, Jane, we know you're from Chicago today, right? But why don't you tell our audience a little bit about your background?
Yes. So thank you so much, John, again for having me. I have a really interesting background. I started my career in consulting for independent pharmacies in the Chicagoland area to work with them to have like a thriving front end business and a back end business as much as possible, which is super niche. And I feel incredibly lucky to have had that opportunity. And then I moved into pharmacy benefits consulting at Mercer. I was able to network and move into global consulting role. And that was how I was introduced to Forma, actually. So I am now a large enterprise account executive here. And I absolutely love spreading the good word of Forma. So Forma is an HR technology company, and we specialize in providing flexible spending accounts or lifestyle spending accounts, LSA, and also pre-tax accounts like HSA, FSA, commuter, and COBRA benefits.
Well, there you go. And some of you may remember that about a year ago, we did a detailed video on lifestyle spending accounts with Susie Goodwin. If you want additional information on lifestyle spending accounts, feel free to click the video in front of you. So, Jane, let's get right into it, right? So with your pharmacy background, what I'm hearing from employers out there, right? So I guess there's these type of medications out there called GLP-1s, right? So a lot of employers are, looking at them for the first time. They're saying, okay, we kind of cover it for type 2 diabetes today, but it also seems that some of these medications can be used for weight loss. So can you kind of walk us through what the GLP-1s are and whether or not they're for type 2 diabetes or weight loss or both?
Yeah. So GLP-1, glucagon-like peptide 1,
Good for
full
you. I
name.
can't say that.
Yeah. Medications, they're a class of drugs, and they're used in the management of type 2 diabetes, as you mentioned, and more recently for weight loss. So GLP-1 is a naturally occurring hormone that plays a role in regulating blood sugar levels. And these medications mimic the effects of GLP-1, so helping to lower blood sugar levels and in some cases promoting weight loss. So diabetes medications, you'll hear the names, brand names like Byetta, Victoza, Trulicity, and of course, Ozempic and semaglutide. And then when discussing weight management drugs, they're like Saxena and Wegovy. Are the names you most commonly hear. Saxena, for some reason, is the harder one for me. These medications have shown efficacy, not only improving blood sugar control, but also helping patients achieve weight loss. So the exact mechanisms for weight loss are not fully understood, but they may involve in reduced appetite, increased feelings of fullness, and kind of alterations in the central nervous system. It is important to note that the use of these medications should be under the supervision of a healthcare professional, and the decision to prescribe them will depend on individual factors and health conditions.
And I think there's some additional ones that are coming to market, right? I think Zepbound was the most recent one that's for weight loss, and it has that sister, medication out there, Mounjaro, which is for type 2 diabetes. So definitely can get a little confusing on whether or not a medication is for type 2 diabetes or weight loss. So let's talk about costs, right? So we kind of alluded to it, and these medications can be very, very expensive, right? Before rebates, you're talking these medications can cost anywhere between $1,200, maybe $1,500 per month, and maybe after rebates, anywhere between $700 and $900 per month. And let's say you're an employer out there, and hypothetically, let's say you cover 5,000 employees, easily for 2024, you can spend $3 to $6 million on these medications if they're not managed properly, right? And some of my clients out there are saying, "Hey, John, right? Should we actually cover these medications? Is there a way to get a better price, or is this something we're stuck with?" So I guess we'll ask you, right? Is there something that employers can do to really cover these medications without dropping coverage?
Yes, so there is. So there is a way to use a health reimbursement account or an HRA through vendors like Forma to allow employers to choose how much they'd like to cover for the employees towards the cash price of weight loss drugs. So if you're not familiar, well, if the viewers aren't familiar, a health reimbursement account or an HRA is a type of employer funded health benefit plan that helps employees cover qualified expenses. So employers can contribute funds to the HRA on behalf of the employees, and then employees can use these funds to pay for certain healthcare expenses like the weight loss medications. HRAs are a part of employer sponsored health plans and are subject to specific rules and regulations. And then with an HRA, an employer could fund up to a certain amount annually towards the weight loss medications and have Forma monitor the employee's claim submission so that they have virtually no administration on their end.
So, Jane, this sounds really interesting, right? So, how does the Forma HRA actually work for these weight loss medications?
Yes. So it's actually pretty simple. An employer can come to us, tell us what drugs they'd like to cover and for whom. So, which employees or population, and then they send it to us through an eligibility file. They can choose how much they want to fund, if it rolls over, if they want to give it monthly, quarterly, annually. Forma would apply the employer approved eligibility into the platform, onboard their members, and then employees can submit for reimbursement either on the mobile application or web portal. And then Forma only has real employees reviewing claims, so it's a very buttoned up process to give the employer some peace of mind. And one of the best parts is if employees don't use these funds, then the employer isn't out any money. So we don't invoice them until the funds are used, which is very different from applying funds via payroll. Not only would they be spent, but the employer would then really have no control over understanding how they were used and if they were used towards the proper purpose in the first place.
Fair enough. And it sounds like from the employee perspective, right? If you cover these medications through your PBM, they're likely going to be subject to some sort of prior authorization. So you take that prior authorization away, right? And the employee basically pays for the medication up front, and then they get reimbursed from Forma for whatever the employer subsidy is, right?
Correct.
So sounds interesting, right? And looking at some, calculations right here, it seems that employers might be able to save some money on this. So what are some things that you've seen just potentially what an employer, could save if they're looking to perhaps cover their weight loss medications through the Forma HRA?
I mean, thousands, right? So it's kind of in the hands of the employer how much they want to provide to the employee. So with the helps of consultants like yourself and our data, we can provide the employer the best practices for how many different types of accounts within Forma. But if employers only want to cover $150 a month towards the cost of the cash price, they can, or they could provide 10,000 a year. It's extremely customizable and based on employers like budget capacity at the time. It's really up to the employer on how much capacity they have to fund it.
No, that's certainly very interesting right there. And just doing some, quick calculations, just in my head right here, it seems like depending on the subsidy level, an employer could definitely save 50% or more, depending on what they're paying today and what overall subsidy they have. Is that fair?
Yeah, I would say that's more than fair.
So it truly is like a defined contribution approach, right? Where the employer is saying, "Hey, we're going to cover X dollars, whatever X dollars is, and that's going to be the benefit that we ultimately cover and provide people with subsidy for these medications."
Correct.
Yeah. And just as a quick aside, so one thing that I've seen out there, right? And if you want to check out my video on Zepbound, you actually look out there and the cash price of these medications can be cheaper compared to insurance. Eli Lilly, the maker of Zepbound, is advertising that if you get the medication through them and their copay assistance program, you could pay $550 per month. And if you look at the prices through insurance, you could be paying anywhere net of rebates $700 to $1,000 per month. So it seems like there's an inherent savings opportunity right there. So I have a tricky question for you, Jane.
Okay.
A lot of employees out there, right? So I think the latest stat that I saw is about 40% of employees are actually enrolled in an HSA. The HRA isn't necessarily HSA compliant. So, for employers that have employees in these HSA or high deductible plans, what can they do?
Great question, John. So, for employees who have an HSA with the employer, they would not this would not be available to them as it is considered a medical expense until they hit their deductible. So, in theory, only non-HSA eligible employees could utilize this. However, once the employees who do have an HSA hit their deductible, they can participate. One of the problems with that is that usually employees don't hit their deductibles until closer to the
Sure.
end of the year because they're usually higher priced. So they could miss a year's worth of treatment, but it is an option and it is possible.
Okay, so total flexibility.
Mhm.
So let's say there's an employer out there, right? And they kind of want to, tinker with this and see how much money they could potentially save. So what do you have to help them with this?
Yes. So we have a feasibility calculator we can use to estimate savings should an employer pay dollars towards the cash amounts for employees. So wanting access to medicines for weight loss. All we'd need to understand is the net cost of what they had spent on weight loss medications. The prior year, if they have it, the amount of employees that's really important that would be eligible for the account access on Forma, and which we assume would be the amount of employees utilizing it as well. And then we'll apply the general rebate percentages to consider inflation effects for the coming year. You get it. And then they can either come to me at Forma or their known Forma account executive or their consultants at Mercer to reach out to us and help us with the calculations.
Very cool. So, Jane, let's say there's someone out there, right? Maybe they're interested in the cost calculator or they want to hear a little bit more about the nitty gritty details. Where can they go?
Yes, so they can, again, either come to me. My email is jane@joinforma.com, or they can go to their very helpful, knowledgeable consultants at Mercer or wherever they get their consultants. Kind of like wherever you get your podcasts.
There you go. Well, Jane, thank you so much for joining us today. I think this is, a really interesting concept and very leading edge in the marketplace.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Of course. And for our viewers out there, we want to hear from you. If you're an employer, is this something that would be of interest to you? Comment below.